guys, and welcome back to my channel. In today's video, I decided to give my top 20 Netflix recommendations just because it's July, about to be August, and we're still technically in quarantine and we have no idea when exactly this is all gonna end. So if you're like me, I have felt like I literally have nothing to watch. So I am hopefully gonna be giving recommendations that you guys haven't watched, so you probably have heard about or seen and just haven't had the time to watch it, and you'll finally watch it. But other than that, we're gonna go ahead and get into the video. So most of my recommendations are thrillers or dramas. I only have a couple comedies on this list. My first recommendation is Mindhunters. So all my crime fanatics probably already heard about this show on Netflix. I do not think it's a well-known show on Netflix, in my opinion, just because the only reason I heard about it was from someone recommending it to me. But Mindhunters is basically about these two guys who are developing our modern serial killer profiling system that we have today. And basically they figure this out by asking these incarcerated serial killers at the time, because I think it takes place in about like 70s or 80s. Do not quote me on that. I think it does. I'm not for sure. But they interview different serial killers at the time, and they just ask them questions about their upbringing, things about the crimes that they committed and what really led them to commit the crimes that they committed and what they were feeling while committing the crimes. So if you like crime shows like me, you're really gonna enjoy it. That was definitely my cup of tea. That is something I literally binged watch in I think about 2 days, just because all the episodes are like super long. They're like an hour long each for the series, so you're definitely gonna get a lot of information. So yeah, if you're into that crime stuff, definitely give it a watch, just because if you're not really into that crime stuff, you will find it boring very quickly, just because of how they're talking and how it's all playing out. So the next show I want to recommend is called The Society, and I think The Society might be like a middle ground kind of show. I don't think it's too popular, but I don't think it's like unknown. And I actually came across Society on accident. I was just scrolling through Netflix and I saw it and I was like, that looks like something I could fall asleep on. And I put it on thinking that I was gonna fall asleep for the night, but I ended up actually enjoying it. And I did not expect it to be that as intense as it was. So basically The Society is about this group of high school students who go on this school trip. They leave and then all of a sudden the bus drivers say they have to come back. So the bus drivers drop them back off in a town that looks like their town, but it's not their town. And these kids kind of have to figure out how to survive and live on their own, because there's no way out of the town. They have no family in the town, and they kind of just have to figure out how to function without that authority in the town, because of course people without rules and regulations, they will start going a little crazy, and it kind of shows that in the show. But that show definitely kept me on the edge of my seat. That show just had me feeling all types of emotions of anger and then just breaking my heart a little bit. It's definitely a good show to watch. I watched that show I think in 1 day. It's that good. It's a show that really kind of makes you think about things. Like, it definitely like challenges your mind about stuff and kind of just figuring out the mysteries and stuff, and just wondering how exactly they're going to get back home after being stuck in this town. The next show I want to recommend is Grey's Anatomy, and I'm pretty sure that Grey's Anatomy is a very well-known show. I just started watching it recently. I am on season 10, and I've heard a lot about Grey's Anatomy. I've had many people telling me to watch Grey's Anatomy, and Grey's Anatomy was definitely one of those shows that like my mom would watch, and I would just walk in, I kind of just watch an episode with her and kind of leave and didn't know exactly what was happening. So I finally sat down and actually watched it, and that show is like so good. And it is basically about these interns who are just working their way from interns to residents to full-on attendings, but it really circles around the character Meredith Grey, because it's called Grey's Anatomy, so it's about her and basically about kind of really her life. Well, since a lot of people are telling me to watch the show, I kind of already knew about the big things that happened in the show, and I thought that would prepare me, but it really didn't. So every single time something happened that I knew about but just didn't exactly know when it was going to happen, it happened, I would start crying. And Grey's Anatomy is something that I had to take breaks with watching. I cannot watch Grey's Anatomy all day. That is just something that holds something heavy over your heart. I cannot watch that all day, every day. It's good. It It is really good, and honestly, if my heart could really take that, I would watch it all day, every day. But I need a break from my heart breaking over these patients. And so far, I think Dr. Ridley is my favorite character, just because she keeps it real. And like, I feel like everyone likes a character that keeps it real and doesn't hold any favoritism and stuff. All right, so the next show I want to recommend is called Spinning Out. It is a drama show about this girl named Kat who had an injury from ice skating and is trying to work her way back into ice skating competitively. I don't know how to say the word. I hate when I can't say words. But anyways, but while she's trying to get back into ice skating and stuff, she has to deal with a mother who is bipolar, and her mother tends to not take her medication. And not only that, Kat is also bipolar, so she also has to deal with that within herself. But there's not really much on how to explain that show, just because it only has one season. And I'm also going to go ahead and say that it is canceled, so if you don't want to watch a show that leaves like a cliffhanger and just doesn't close anything, I would not recommend watching this show. But if you want to watch a good show, watch it, because it is a really good show. Like, I feel like people, when they cancel TV shows, I feel like they always cancel the show that no one wants canceled, but they aren't canceling the show people do want canceled. I don't know. The next show I want to recommend is Chilling Adventures of Sabrina. So if you have seen Sabrina the Teen Witch, you kind of know who Sabrina Spellman is. So you kind of basically know like plot of the show. The one thing I will say that's different about this show is that it is very dark. So if you do not like dark shows, I would tell you not to watch this show. But if you don't know if you can handle the darkness, I would recommend just watching that first episode. And if you cannot handle it getting darker than the first episode, then stop watching it, just because it gets a lot darker. And I thought whenever I first started watching it that it'd be kind of a comedy, you know, just like how Sabrina the Teen Witch was more of a comedy and stuff. And when it released the first trailer for the show, it has more of this comedy feel type of, you know, music playing over the trailer, and you don't expect it to be that dark. But then the episode started and I was like, okay, wow, it just got dark in like 2.5 seconds. I was not expecting that, because in the trailer doesn't show any dark parts. So just prepare yourself for that. The next show I want to recommend is Haunting of Hill House. I feel like everyone has seen the show, but if you haven't, I'm telling you now to watch it, because it is such a good show. And if you do get scared easily, watch it with somebody and don't watch it in the dark. But I'm also going to recommend you to watch it in the dark, just because a lot of the scenes are in the dark. These creators have put something off in every single scene in the background, but you'll really be looking to see it. Once you see it, you cannot unsee it. It's one of those things. It's about this family who lives at this place called Hill House, and it's haunted. I'm just gonna say it's haunted. And they all had different experiences in the house, and some choose to, you know, acknowledge it, and some choose to be in denial about it. But overall, it's a really good show. I can't really explain more about it. I've heard that it's coming back for season 2, and it's gonna be the same characters, but I think it's gonna be like a different story, if that makes sense. If you watch American Horror Story, I think it's gonna do something like that, where it's the same people, but it's like a different story. They're playing different characters, you know. The next show I want to recommend is The People versus OJ Simpson. I love this show just because I like hear about trials and kind of just watch trial processes. And if you don't know about The People versus OJ, basically it's just OJ Simpson, who was a famous football player, being accused for the murder of his ex-wife and her friend. It's not in a documentary form. It actually has actors playing. So if that's your cup of tea, definitely watch it. It's really good. I think that show does an excellent representation of how everything went down. Because, you know, at the end of the day, the trial was decided. That is a trial, I think, that made everyone mad, and I think everyone is very divided over that trial. Just because during this time period, LAPD was known for just accusing African-American men of crimes just because it was convenient. So I think that's a big reason why there was a big divide on whether or not he did it. But we can all have our own opinions about it. The next one I want to recommend is The Assassination of Johnny Versace. I'm not sure how to exactly say the name. I think I say it right, but then like it turns out I'm saying it wrong. That show is basically about the assassination of Johnny Versace. It follows the killer and it works its way backwards, so it's kind of weird. The first episode shows the murder and stuff, but then it works and it shows what happened like after, and then the next episode shows what happened before he shot him, and like like leads up to like him shooting him, if that makes sense. I don't know how to explain that, but it just follows the killer and it just shows what he did within those 3 days, because he did kill 2 other people before going to kill Gianni. That whole thing, and it gives a background on who he really is, how his life was growing up, and until this day I don't think anyone really knows exactly how he knew Gianni. He claims he knew him, but obviously there's no proof about it. So moving on, the next show I want to recommend is called Hollywood, and Hollywood is a new show on Netflix. I'm not really sure on how to describe it exactly, just because it is a new show. It only has 1 season so far, and it's a pretty basic kind of plot, so I can't say too much without giving everything else that happens in the show away. But it's just basically about this group of people who are just trying to make it in Hollywood, and they will do anything to make it in Hollywood, anything. And that's basically the plot of the show, and the show is actually pretty good. The one thing I will say about the show is that it's one of those shows that you have to actually be watching to be interested, I feel like, because the first time I put it on, I didn't really watch it, so I wasn't really invested. But when I replayed the first episode, it was something that actually drew me in once I was paying attention to it. So I do recommend paying attention to the show, or you're not going to be all into it, I don't think. But it's different for everyone. So the next show I want to recommend is Lock and Key. Lock and Key, I think, is still kind of new. I think it came out this year, if I'm not mistaken. So basically, Lock and Key is about this family who relocates back to the father's house called Key House after he is murdered. Kids find a bunch of keys that do a bunch of like different things, and the keys all tie into the dad's murder, but you'll figure out like how it does like along the way. But from the get-go, you kind of know that the keys have to do something with the dad's murder. Like from the get-go, you know that. Like, if you're paying attention, at least you'll know that. It's very, very clear. The next show I want to recommend is Raising Dion. It's about a little boy named Dion who has like these magical powers, and he's living with his mom. She's trying to figure out what exactly happened to his father, who was murdered mysteriously. She doesn't know exactly what happened, but that's not about that show. The next show I want to recommend is All American. So it is about this guy named Spencer who is a football player, and he's just trying to be this amazing football player, make it to the NFL. But you know, he's growing up in an area where you can't really focus on yourself, I guess. He really cares about his family and cares about taking care of his family, and doesn't like doing things if it's not in his family's best interest. I can't really give it a comparison to something, just because All American is one of the shows that is just all around its own show, and it makes you feel so much emotion. And it's one of those and it's also those shows that, like, when something good happens, you cry those happy tears, and then when something sad happens, you cry again. The next show I want to recommend is Unbelievable, and it's about this girl who is raped and nobody believes her. It is based on a true story, and the reason they don't believe her is because whenever she comes in and she makes her statements and stuff like that, it's different from how she reports it like the morning after it happened. So they charge her with false accusation because they can't find the guy. There's no evidence. But if you watch it, you kind of see that she's in a stressful situation. Not everyone acts the same in stressful situations, especially when it comes to something as big as, you know, rape. Like, that's something that's very difficult to even talk about. And it's not until years later when these 2 female cops will stop to no end, because they get the same report of the same thing happening to girls just like her. And, you know, they figure out who it is, and he took pictures of every single girl he, you know, raped after he was done, and they find a picture of the girl. You know, they have to apologize to her and, you know, offer that little settlement money because they didn't believe her in the first place. The next show I want to recommend is called Glitch, and it is an Australian show. I do not think it's a well-known show. I was also recommended it by a friend to watch, and it's about these people who rise from the dead for some unknown reason, and they are like living again, and then like they can't leave like the town. Like, there's like an invisible like boundary line, so if they leave the town, like, they'll die. But other than that, I can't really explain everything about the show without giving it away. Okay, so the next show I'm gonna recommend is called Haunted. And Haunted is a show on Netflix that you can watch if you want to just hear different scary short stories. So if you're into that type of thing, that's the show for you. The next show I'm gonna talk about is called Greenleaf, and it's basically about this family who, you know, has their own church. The father is pastor and, you know, mom's first lady. But while they have this front of being like this nice, beautiful family, there are a lot of family secrets that are swept under the rug that no one really knows about. And it's also what led one of the daughters to leave the family home in the first place and not speak to her family. And if I remember correctly, she doesn't speak to her family for years, and she comes back at the beginning of this show, and that's how the show starts. This show is definitely more of like a soap opera, I guess, kind of drama. I'm kind of not really into those things, but this show is actually really good with all the, you know, the tea that is spilled with this family, because just when you think you know everything about this family, a whole different thing pops up. So if you like those shows with families that have like a bunch of like crazy things that happen in the family that no one talks about, definitely watch that show. It's just like every single secret that a family could have is happening in that one family. The next show I want to recommend is called In the Dark, and it is about this girl who is blind, and you know, she meets this little boy who's her best friend. And one day she just comes across their spot, and supposedly, you know, because she can't see, she feels his dead body, and you know, police can't find anything. No one really believes her, but she doesn't believe anything that's being told to her. She is going out of her way to put everything together herself and find out what happened to her friend. That is a show that is a drama, but it's also one of those shows that's like a comedy. The next show I'm recommending is The Office. I feel like The Office is a well-known show. I do feel like The Office can be a little bit overhyped. You know, at the end of the day, The Office is not for everybody. Not everyone has that sense of humor. What I will say is that you kind of have to watch a little bit to get into it. The first season is not all that interesting. It doesn't really start picking up until the second season, because the first season is more of just introducing the characters, just seeing how the characters are, while the second season is more of a interesting stuff, more drama to it, and you know, just play it out, because it's a good show if you have that certain type of humor for it. The next show I want to recommend is Outer Banks. I just want to point out that I came across Outer Banks before it was even like popular. I watched it when it first came out. Like, I watched it the first night it was on there. As soon as it was on Netflix, I saw it and put it on. I will admit that I only put it on for noise, but I ended up liking it. That show has like the most basic plot, and they make it so interesting. And it's basically about this group of friends who go on this big treasure hunt, and John B, who's the main character of the show, really kind of revolves around. He is living on his own, and you don't know exactly why he's on his own, but you find out along the way. I feel like it did take me a second to get into the show. Like, the first episode was okay, but it wasn't really until the end of the second episode that I was actually into the show. The last show I want to recommend is Stranger Things, and I feel like Stranger Things is a very popular show. Everybody is just waiting to watch the next season, and I feel like everyone has seen Stranger Things at this point, unless you were like me and just truly just don't want to watch it because everyone else is watching it. But I finally gave in. It's about this group of 4 boys originally who come across this girl who has been experimented on, and she has like these weird powers by like these weird scientists in this weird hospital, and they're basically just trying to protect her from those people. That's like the basic description of the show. It does not do the show any justice. The graphics of this show is so good. It's definitely something that will, you know, keep you watching. It's very entertaining watching everything all play out. So we have come to the end of this video. I hope you guys enjoyed all my different Netflix recommendations I have for you guys, and hopefully there was a show that stood out to you that you want to give a chance. If you have made it this far into the video, please go ahead and subscribe to my channel, and don't forget to like and comment, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye. Yeah. I'ma buy a mansion for my mama when I finally make it. Take all my vacations to Bahamas, always celebrating. Ever since my birthday was the bomb, and now I'm detonating. No, you can't relate, you just can't relate. Every day I wake up like a boss, and I be thanking Jesus. Fakers trying to get up in my circle.